Okay, this is a call out to my listeners. I do not have a lot of sponsors for this podcast on purpose because I don't want to waste your time with products I am not crazy about. Well, I do have two that I am crazy about. The first one is LLC TLC. This is where you can save money on your car registration. Every year, you can set up a Montana LLC and pay no sales tax on your vehicle purchases, which is really amazing. Now, you can also permanently register your classic cars in Montana to avoid any annual renewal fees. And as your registered agent, LLC TLC will handle everything for you, so you never have to step foot in Montana to take advantage of this incredible offer. Now, as a listener of this podcast, they are offering 30% off your entire package. Now, to get this, simply go to llctlc.com/classic or mention this podcast when you call them directly. My other big sponsor of this podcast is Euro Classics out of Dayton, Ohio. Now, that's Euro Classic with an X.com. If you want to reach them in person, you can reach them at 937-299-1311. Now, this is where I get all of the work done on my Porsche. I just had my GTO in there. My Mustang's been in there. It is the place to go if you want awesome service at an extremely competitive price. So when you go there, just ask for Dale and tell them that I sent you. Hey, it's GStanley with the Classic Car Podcast. We're going to talk about the big Moda event coming up in the Sotheby's auction in Miami. And to help me do this, I've got Gord Duff. Gord, how you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate it. Now, I am going to have a separate podcast to review some of the supercars. So if you're a supercar fan, I will have one special supercar in this podcast, but stay tuned to next week where I'll go in more depth with some of the offerings for the Sotheby's auction. All right, Gord, kind of tell us a little bit about Moda Miami. This is a huge event that's happening beginning on February the 29th and going through the weekend. Could you give us just an overview for those folks that maybe they don't know anything about it?
So it's a brand new event for us this year after leaving Amelia Island after 20 something years. We had done a sale down in Miami about a year and a half ago. And while down there, just started poking around at, different locations and seeing if, it might make sense for us to move further south, easier place for people to fly in and out of, bigger city, more stuff to do, and kind of came across this Biltmore Hotel in Coral Gables, and it just kind of seemed like it was the perfect fit for us. So we decided to, one, move our auction down that way and to add a car show event to it to make it, more interesting for people to make a weekend out of it. So, we're 2 weeks out from our inaugural event, and we've got over 150 cars for the field for Saturday and Sunday, and there's a little tour on Friday, and we have some incredible cars coming out, from former Best of Show Pebble Beach winners to the Mercedes Sterling Moss that was just announced. It's coming direct from the Mercedes-Benz factory, which is a giant deal.
Yeah, that is huge. When I saw that, I was like, holy crap, that's a big deal to get that car, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's insane.
A great relationship with Mercedes-Benz now, and it was great that they were willing to participate in our inaugural event.
Yeah, what I love about this is I've been to the Biltmore Scottsdale, where obviously we have the Sotheby's auction every year, and it's just a fantastic venue. But then I look at the pictures online at the Coral Gables version. I'm like, oh my gosh, this place is insane. And it sounds like we're going to be in multiple fairways. Is that correct?
Yeah, our auction cars are going to actually be on one of the fairways. We're constructing a tent out back, so the auction cars will be on display starting Thursday morning, and our sales Friday afternoon, Saturday afternoon. But the 2 or 3 fairways adjacent to where the auction cars will be is where the show will be set up, and it'll be set up starting for I think for Saturday afternoon. So it'll be a Saturday event, Saturday night, and then all day Sunday. And the twist on Sunday is that we're adding 100 supercars that'll be driven in from various owners that'll be set up as well. So it'll be like a completely separate section from the actual concours. So it's just something new to try.
Yeah, and I love that because Miami, if you think about Miami, you think of Miami Vice and Testarossas and Daytona Spiders and Ferrari. So it's supercar mecca pretty much, and so to bring out 100 supercars on Sunday to overlay on top of the 150 Concours cars is just insane, on top of the auction cars, which is like its own Concours in and of itself. it's really nuts. And I also love the fact that you said 100 cars, but it's the way I see it, 99 cars are coming in, and we're going to do a special unveiling of one particular supercar. Is that correct?
Yes, that's my understanding. That's even kept secret from me at this moment.
Well, if it's kept secret from you, then it's going to be a big car, a big deal. And so be sure you're out there on Sunday to see what this is. Now, there's a lot of other stuff going on for the entire weekend. I mean, we have the auction preview on Thursday. I'm looking at the information here. There's a cruise, Moda Miami cruise, Friday morning at 9 a.m. And then we have the auction day one starting at 12 p.m. And then Friday night, it sounds like there'll be a ton of incredible food available. Carbone dinner. So apparently we're bringing in some celebrity chefs, correct?
Yeah, the Carbone was an idea from some friends of ours in Miami. It's a super hot ticket to get into the restaurant to eat. They have one in New York, and I think they have one in Vegas. But some people wait, I guess, 3 or 4 months in order to kind of get a reservation at this place. And again, just a kind of different twist on the traditional, Concours weekend. So we're just trying, a few different things to see how people react to them.
Yeah, because in your typical Concours weekend, I'm trying to figure out, all right, where are we going to go for lunch or dinner? And usually it's packed and, there's all sorts of stuff. Whereas this is kind of all inclusive, which I love. And not to give anything away, but there's a picture of synchronized swimming on the website. So who knows? There's all sorts of out of the box thinking stuff going on here. And the other thing I love is you got Magic Hour at Moda. So sometimes you'll have the cars parade in at 5:30 in the morning, and nobody can really enjoy that unless you're a true diehard. Well, we've got that happening at 9 a.m., correct? So people can, the light of day, they can see some of these cool cars.
Yeah, and we'll also have kind of the show set up for Saturday evening under the lights. So there's never really been a Concours that's taken place kind of at night. So it's a bit of another twist on the traditional Concours scene.
Right. And then overlaying all of this, you have Sotheby's luxury and style experiences. So I'm assuming that's your high-end watches, your purses, your memorabilia, all sorts of cool stuff.
Yeah, they'll have a mixture, a variety of different stuff there that's, buy it now available. We've done similar build outs in Monterey over the last couple of years with them, and it's been, well received from the clientele. So we're kind of pushing forward with doing it here as well.
Yeah, that's great. I remember at Monterey, you had, I think it was 6 Michael Jordan championship sneakers, from each championship. And, that's just stuff you can't typically see with your own eyes. And so to go to an event such as this, you'll see some really, really cool stuff. All right. Is there anything else about Moda Weekend? You can go to modamiami.com. We'll start talking about some cars here, but anything else about the Moda aspect of it?
I think for anybody local from Florida or that hasn't made arrangements for something else, I think the first year is going to be a big one for us. And there's been a tremendous amount of effort put in it by, many, many people. And we always aim to do things top notch. And that's what everybody can expect next weekend coming down to, see what we've put together.
Yeah, that's totally true. And I'll just give one other little story here. Is I had a client that I was trying to get a couple cars for, and talking about top notch, I rolled up a historic Shelby and a historic Ferrari, and they kind of wanted to bring the Ferrari. But the response from the folks at Moda was, well, when they see the Shelby display, they probably want to bring the Shelby. And I asked them, well, what are you talking about? We're going to have the fairway laid out like a racing grid, correct, with historic Shelbys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shelby's, Cobras, and I think we have a couple GT40s coming as well. So it'll be a good variety. We have a really good friend of ours that kind of handled that piece of it for us. And we've had great interest from clients that definitely want to see this become successful and are, sending their really important cars down. So it's, we've had great support from our clientele over the last 12 months as well.
When I told them that, they decided to bring both cars. So it worked out great.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to some cars here. So we're going to cover a couple of the cool cars coming to the RM Sotheby's Miami auction. Now, what I love about RM Sotheby's is it's a lot of diversity, which is really cool. And like I said, the supercars, with the exception of one, I'll cover that on a separate podcast. But let's kick this off with what I would call a 1960s supercar. 1966 Porsche 906 Carrera 6. So this is quite a historic piece, and it's red, which is really, really cool about these cars. Typically, you see them in silver. What can you tell us about this 906 Carrera 6?
I think, aside from the history, you can read online the how authentic this car is, that it's restored by one of the best Porsche restorers in the country, Kevin Jeanette. It's been looked after and maintained for the current owner over the last several years from Road Scholars out of Raleigh, North Carolina. Another one of the best, restorations and maintenance shops for significant Porsches in the country. And it's a car that's been used. So it's done, multiple 500 to 800 mile rallies. It's done a couple of them through Colorado. Like, it's rare to have a car that is, you're going to be able to purchase this car and it's on the button, ready to go. There's so many cars that, whether it's just the way they've been in a collection where they always need some sorting out and stuff. And this is one of the rare opportunities that you could literally buy this car and drive it home if you so wanted to do that on a 906. But, the pedigree is great, and the restoration quality and the maintenance and, the way it's been cared for has been, second to none. You don't see cars that often come up that are so kind of turnkey on the button, so to speak.
Yeah, especially one such as that. That is such a beautiful car. And like you said, being sorted, usable, ready to go is a big selling point, especially on such an exotic car such as a Porsche 906. All right, next, like I said, we like diversity at RM, and the next one goes in the opposite direction here. 1937 Mercedes-Benz 540K. Estimate on this one's $2 to $2.4 million. Any Mercedes 540K special. What do you like about this one?
It's not just a 540K Cabe. It's a special that was done. It's a one-off. It's got the fenders are special. They're similar to a 540K special roadster. The windshield's different on this car. The radiator set back. It's just got little pieces that were kind of custom made when this car back when it was new. So it makes it, far more special than most other Cabes out there. It's a car that mechanically is sorted and sound. It just had a new top and interior put in the car just to freshen it up some, but it's also a car that, like, everything matches on it. When the interior was put in the car, a lot of the trim pieces, on these Mercedes, every piece of trim is stamped with a body number. And when we did the interior in this car for the current owner, but when we started pulling the car apart, it was one of those just pure, unmolested, was always a great car. It wasn't something that had been sitting somewhere for a number of years. It's got ownership history from new. It's for somebody looking for a 540K, this is a great example. And it's I think priced fairly, where you're not looking at one that's, $3, $4, $5 million for the money. I think it's very good value, for the quality of this car.
Right. Yep. And they are gorgeous, and great ownership history on this car. Previous Best of Show winner at Pebble Beach, which is incredible. So beautiful, beautiful car. I know you know quite a bit about these Mercedes, so I appreciate you giving us the insight on that. All right, next, we talked about this a little bit ahead of the call, a 2003 Sailing S7. Now, this is quite the supercar. Estimates 575 to 675. I think these are just stunningly beautiful cars in my mind. One of the few American supercars from that era. Very rare, very powerful. What can you tell us about this car?
You don't see them come up that often for sale. I think they're still a car that's really undervalued for, the amount that they built, how limited they are, the design that they carry. This one's only got 9,400 miles on it, and it's one of the naturally aspirated ones. I think they built some other competition ones that have superchargers or turbochargers on them, but I think this would be, for what it is, a very easy car to drive, versus some of the other ones get to be almost too much of a race car versus like something you could drive on the street. But I think it's a good color combination, and it's a car in my mind I still feel is not fully appreciated and valued yet.
I totally agree with you, because I feel like there's that window of time, you call them analog supercars. They're the last of the most powerful, quote unquote, analog cars that are manual and they're powerful. And this is one of those that you could show up to almost any show and you'll be the only one there, versus some variant of a Ferrari. You rarely ever see these things, and they're just cool. So yeah, I'm curious to see where that ends. I would expect that it would exceed the high estimate, but we'll see. That would be a very fun one to watch. All right, next, 1967 Ferrari 365 California Spider. Now, the estimate on this one's $4 to $4.5 million. This is a pretty rare bird, right? One of 14 or so built. You never see these either. And this is what you might call a 60s supercar, but a drop top version.
Yeah. They're extremely rare, right? Only 14 built. There hasn't been one on the public market. Last time I checked, it was like 12 or 14 years ago, the last time one of these changed hands. They're obviously not as desirable as a 250 cal Spider, but far rarer. And I think it's for somebody that is kind of, building out that 60s Ferrari collection, that maybe, this is a rare piece to put along with some other cars you have, or just to have something rarer than, I guess, a 250 cal Spider, or just something different from a Series 1 cab, that is still more money than this. And they built a lot more of them. The car was restored by Paul Russell and Company about 10 or 12 years ago. It's won at Platinum. It's Ferrari Red Book certified, complete numbers matching. I think it's 3 owners from new. It's always been a good car. It's restored back to its factory colors. We could be another 10 years waiting for one of these to come up. So this is, I think, one of it is one of the stars of the show, but this is a car that I think could surprise us, just because you never see them, come up for sale. And I think there'll be, strong interest in it here week after next.
Right. Okay. No, that makes sense. All right. Next, you might have, when you saw this on my list, you might have thought, what are you thinking? Because it doesn't quite fit with what we've been talking about. But 1990 Mercedes-Benz 560 SEL 6-liter AMG, the Hammer. This one's different in that it's a limousine offering. And I just wanted you to talk about not necessarily this car in particular, but just the AMG trend, the youngtimer trend you're seeing out there. They seem to be very, very hot, right?
Yeah. For the last, it's probably been honestly a good 5 years now, when these things initially first started kind of emerging or coming to the market, and it took people off guard when they saw us. I think we were the first ones to really bring a big package to auction in 17 or 18, and to see them bring in 2, 3, 4 times the estimates we had initially put on them. And I think all of a sudden people woke up to, these are a super rare car, limited numbers. You really need to know what you're looking at, because there's lots of cars that were, converted in period. So to find the ones that are born the way that you see them today, like this car, is really rare. And to find them in this kind of condition, right? Because I think, not that they weren't special when they were new, but I think a lot of them were just, used, as opposed to thinking about them as a collector car. And I can't remember if we know what the ownership history was from new, but this would have been a special order for somebody really significant. And this was at the times, almost before, I guess, when, Porsche was starting special wishes and stuff like that, where, people were special ordering these cars to, the spec that they wanted. But I don't know the last time specifically one of these came up for sale, but the market is definitely very strong for probably people more, my generation versus yours, that are, starting to get into these, and they were at one time really affordable, and they still are now, compared to, let's say, cars from the 60s or supercars, right? They've got a certain segment, and super popular.
Did you just call me old?
Older than me.
Nice save. Nice.
So,
all right. Next, this is truly the supercar of the era. I did a podcast episode, the fastest car for every decade, and the Duesenberg was the fastest car for technically 1920s and 1930s. So 1929 Duesenberg Model J sweep panel dual cowl Phaeton, estimates $2.65 to $2.85 million. I know you love your Duesenbergs. Tell me about this car.
It's a great car. It was originally sold to the Wrigley chewing gum family, so it actually would have been probably parked in the garage at the top of the hill at the Arizona Biltmore, where the Wrigley Mansion's up top. It in period, what some people did is this car originally was born with a different body, and when this car was a year old or a year and a half old, they had this body built and put on the car. But for the Wrigley family, they just decided they wanted an open four-door body for the car. But all numbers are matching on the car. It was restored in the late 90s by, I believe it was Brian Joseph up in Michigan. It was maintained by him for probably from the 90s until 4 or 5 years ago. And he is well known as one of the best, Duesenberg mechanical shops in the country. It's now called Straight Eight. And it's kind of like the 906 in the way that, this car's been on some Duesenberg tours. It's 265 horsepower. It's on the button, drivetrain's fresh in the car. This is another example of a car that somebody can buy and go right away into showing it, go right away into touring it. Like it's not going to need additional money spent on it to get it sorted. And, things like that can easily creep up to be 50, 100, 150 grand to sort one of these cars out. So, I like the history of the car. I like the quality of the car, and mechanically it's one of those on the button ready to go.
So when they restored it, did they find any gum stuck up underneath the dash?
Not sure about that. I would have to make a phone research. But yeah, it's definitely a great car, and for people that aren't into these, this is the McLaren F1 of the 1930s. For American type cars, you can drive this car at 80 or 90 miles an hour if you so desired to. But yeah, one of the most powerful cars of the 30s.
Yeah. Okay, great. All right. Well, we have two more cars left. We're hopping around again a little bit. 1953 Ferrari 250 Europa Coupe, $4.5 to $5.5 million. Now, this is really probably the top echelon of cars in the 1950s. Just a stunning car. It looks like 22 were built, 1953 Paris Motor Show car. And looks like it has some really strong awards history as well as ownership history. What can you tell us about this beautiful car?
The car has had great pedigree from day one, from the show circuit to the way you see it today, the quality of the restoration, the amount of awards that this car has won literally around the world. I think this car has been to the Middle East. It's been all over Europe. It's been to many of the shows in North America. The current owner loves showing his cars once they get restored. It's a very unique looking car, from the front grille to the front fenders. Like, I do love the design. I love the low roof line on the car. It's painted back to its original colors, the way it was at the Paris Motor Show. And it's a completely, matching bulletproof car, certified, checks all the boxes and has no stories. And on the high-end vintage Ferrari side of the world, like, this is what people want. They want the best quality, and they want one that's a completely, pure numbers matching car from front to back. And this is one of those examples.
Yeah, it's absolutely stunning. The color combination, dark maroon, black coves, and black top, just beautiful. Okay, so for our last car, now this is going back even further, 1930 Cadillac V16 Roadster, $1 to $1.3 million. I picked this because this was the first year of the V16. Cadillac rolled it out, just such an iconic car. What can you tell us about Caddy V16s in general and the collector car market, and any particular notes about this one as well?
I mean, a Duesenberg's my number one choice, and I think number two would be a V16 Cadillac Roadster. I don't think they get much better looking than this car. If you were to buy this in, a Duesenberg with a similar body, you're talking, 3 to 4 times the money. So I think for the value of the car and what you get, it's an extremely great thing to own. This car's super pure, just like Duesenberg's. There's, a lot of Cadillacs that have been, bodies moved around, new bodies built, motors changed out. Like, this is another car that has, like, it's pure from day one. I think the other cool thing is, it's in the description somewhere, but this is the car used for the Franklin Mint model. So
that's cool.
I think that's pretty cool that, they use this car, these colors, this one to make that model. So, I think that'll appeal to clients like it does to me. I think that just adds, added piece of interest. And then, it's restored in good colors, even though it was a car restored 15 or 20 years ago. It's you'd pick these colors today. And I think that's a important thing on, pre-war cars. Sometimes, unfortunately, they had restorations from the 70s or 80s and, bad colors. Where this, even though it was done a while ago, it's colors you'd pick today. And I still think it would look good, on the show circuit if somebody wanted to, get back into that with this car.
Right. Okay. Yeah, it is beautiful. For those that are just listening only, it's a dark green and light green with a black convertible top. Looks like absolutely stunning, beautiful car. All right. One last question for you. So you've seen all these cars. You're pretty much the guy that approves all these cars. So what car would you want? If you can only have one car from the auction, take value out of it, just one that really, that you, when it came through, you're like, oh man, that is sweet.
It's I like Duesenberg's. We have a Murphy Roadster also in the auction. We have two. So we're selling a 4-door Phaeton, and we also have a 2-door convertible coupe. I love cars that have rear mounted spares. So instead of, most 30s cars have spare tires on the front fenders, and the odd time car or spares were put on the back of the car, and they made very few cars. People, back in the day didn't think they were as pretty. That's why they actually didn't build as many, but now they're super rare. And I think they make cars way more attractive. So I really like the Murphy Roadster that we have. It's one of two that had rear mount spares put on the car. High quality restoration. It's probably the one that I would take home. If you're like, you could take one car out of here, that would be the one for me.
That's awesome. Well, is there anything else you wanted to cover about the actual auction? Any cars? I know I'm going to have a follow-up podcast with a lot of the supercars. Any other cars you might want to mention?
I think, as you said in the beginning, we got a great assortment. We have a lot of great supercars. We got stuff from the 90s, and, I love the classics. I like the variety. I think they're more about what our company's about. I like selling the old stuff. So the fact that we have, some great Packards and Cadillacs and Duesenbergs, and I think we have a Delahaye and a couple different Mercedes, like, we have something for everybody. And we have some cars that are, 40 and 50 grand. And then, they go up to $3, $4, $5 million. So we have a good variety and price range, as well as era. And, we're going to sell, I think, around 62, 64 cars a day. So there'll be nice short auctions where, nobody likes sitting through a 5 or 6 hour auction. So I think the way that we have it broken up, and with everything else going on at the hotel, I think it'll be a fun weekend, and we're looking forward to, having our first successful sale down here in Miami.
Awesome, Gord. Well, as always, thanks for joining the Collector Car Podcast.
All right. Thanks for having me, Greg.